Hello and welcome to Newsmax Now. I'm John Bachman. President Trump and leaders from around the world today paying tribute to those who served and those who sacrificed their lives 75 years ago today, storming the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. All right, let's bring in our panel of veterans to talk about the significance of this day. With us tonight, former Marine Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff and former Army Ranger Robin Byro. Jessie, Robin, a very special day, obviously, and a fitting tribute to those heroes of D-Day. Before we move on to the politics of the day, I just wanted to hear from both of you. Can we ever do enough to thank and honor these men? Jessie, first to you, and then Robin.
It is pretty extraordinary. The speech that the president gave is tear-breaking. I've read it, I listened to it, and the emotion that was behind it shows you that these men are like no other. I don't know that we could ever do such an accomplishment again. When the Nazis woke up this morning, 75 years ago, they looked out into the ocean and saw 7,000 naval ships with 130,000 warriors ready to go. And guess what? The first wave knew that they probably would die because that beach was heavily fortified with everything that could kill them. And the colonel that was in charge was asked, what if the Nazis defeat you? What if they stop you in that first wave? And his response was, well, there will be another regiment behind us, and after that, another. And he named off each regiment and battalion and armored unit that was behind him. He said, some will not survive, but someone will. And thank God someone did. The president gave great credit to our allies such as Norway, Poland, the Aussies, Canadians, the British, and the French, who now mourn over those graves, and each family that has adopted those graves and celebrated together the defeat of Adolf Hitler and Nazis worldwide.
Well said, Jessie. Well said. Robin, I know you're an Army Ranger. Obviously, the Rangers were heavily involved in the storming of Omaha Beach, the 101st Airborne Division, the Band of Brothers. That story's been told. You know, for you to see this commemoration, and I'm sure you've learned about it obviously through Ranger Training School, you know, does it ever get old seeing these guys up there on stage and honoring them for you?
No, I love this. I love their stories. I love to go into elderly housing places and speak with them one-on-one and hear their stories. What you can do as Americans is to go to these places where they're aging and just spend time with them. Listen to their stories. They've got a great wealth of information. I heard stories today about men who were talking about that there was so much artillery raining down on them that they actually thought it was hail. Just imagine that. I saw pictures from old Rangers that were scaling the cliffs of Point de Houx, and just hearing their stories was just phenomenal. And no, John, it never gets old. These are great American heroes, and the president did a very good service today by honoring all of them, each and every one of them, John.
Yeah, early this morning I was watching the ceremony with my daughter, who's 7, on TV, and trying to explain to her what happened. And, you know, she's 7, of course, she doesn't understand. But, you know, thinking about her growing old, and these heroes won't be here someday. So it's important, I thought, to make sure, you know, the younger generation sees these heroes in real life, knowing that they were alive, so their legacy lives on. All right, a special day, of course, we'll talk more about the anniversary of D-Day, more specifically how President Trump handled the commemoration events and the unusual praise he is getting from the media for it. Brent Bozell from the Media Research Center will be here for that. Plus, we'll also talk about his great new book. But right now, guys, let's move on. We're going to talk about Nancy Pelosi, who was also there in Normandy. Pelosi leading a bipartisan delegation from Congress to observe D-Day and the ceremonies in Normandy. Now, during an interview with MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell, Pelosi was asked how the impeachment process was going.
With all due respect to your question, I'm not here to talk about impeachment, but I do say that on the subject of our veterans, we always strive to work in a bipartisan way. So this is not a departure from what we set as a standard. Wherever we can, we try to be as bipartisan, nonpartisan as possible.
Okay, so credit Pelosi for not taking the bait on that moment. She also told reporters that she wouldn't talk negatively about the president while she was overseas. That old school rule from politics we used to hear about. But somehow, a story leaked out from a recent closed-door meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Democrats while Pelosi was in France, according to Politico. Pelosi recently told House Democrats that she doesn't want to see President Trump impeached. She wants to see him in prison. Politico cites several Democratic sources, unnamed, of course, that confirm Pelosi said this. The report also says Pelosi said she wants Trump to be defeated in 2020 and then face prosecution once he's out of office. You guys are both savvy political veterans as well as military veterans. Do we think it's just a coincidence that a story about Pelosi saying that she wants the president in prison, just so happened to leak out while she was overseas trying to play, this classy role of not talking junk about the president overseas. Robin?
More than anything, John, I just think it's unfortunate. She actually did try to stay out of bashing the president while he's over there with his family. And it's just unfortunate that this story came out. Look, this kind of thing happens all of the time with the rhetoric and banter. You could go to any Donald Trump rally and they'll still be chanting "lock her up" about Hillary Clinton. I just kind of wish we'd get past that and work, as she said herself in that clip, in a bipartisan manner to actually get things done and help veterans and our military service members, John.
Jessie, it seems like this is one of those leaks that was kind of supposed to happen.
It quite possibly was, but I agree with Robin. You hear it on the right with the lock her up chants, and then you hear this. And what happens is, if that was a reality, it would break apart this country. Many would believe somewhat of a civil war. And I think it'd be foolish for anything like that to happen. That is one big reason why Hillary Clinton, they didn't pursue many of the charges alleged against her, because you start looking like a dictator if you're going to lock up your political opponent. And that essentially would be what it represents. And the country would be so ultimately divided. We have a year and a half for an election to happen. Let the people have a voice on this. Let the people decide. And the re-election of Donald Trump or not would be in their hands. And let that type of election process that the world watches and respects. But when the United States locks up a sitting president in jail, we have surely fallen to the tyranny that we just defeated 75 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why they have this legal ruling that you can't indict a sitting president, because that would happen over and over again. There would be this nonstop cycle of these political prosecutions. Now, President Trump was asked also, he was interviewed today by Fox News while he was in Normandy. He was asked by Fox's Laura Ingraham about Nancy Pelosi and also about Robert Mueller. Trump slammed Pelosi for her handling of the impeachment inquiry. Here's the president.
Nancy Pelosi, I call her Nervous Nancy. Nancy Pelosi doesn't talk about it. Nancy Pelosi's a disaster, okay? She's a disaster. And let her do what she wants. You know what? I think they're in big trouble.
Now, as good as the president's speech was today, I thought this was kind of a low point. I mean, he's in a cemetery. He got the gravestones over his shoulder, and he's calling Nancy Pelosi a disaster and saying Robert Mueller made a fool out of himself. Robin, do we think this is the right venue for this type of rhetoric from the president on DDay?
No, absolutely not. But there's no reining him in here. He's, 72, 73 years old. He's not going to, the leopard's not going to change his spots. So there's that. And, it is what it is.
Yeah, Jesse, it's not that he's wrong. It's just the way it was presented today. Was it the right day?
Well, I can't say, again, I agree with Robin. The fact is that President Trump has run as a very vocal and open person. And if you're going to ask him a question, he's going to answer it. He has not contained himself. And I, as one of his supporters, actually appreciate it versus those that want to have more scripted politician. But one of the things that often frustrated me about watching President Bush was he would not defend himself. And the cat would get out of the barn and you couldn't reel it back in. By the time he would come back with a defense, you were sitting there going, where were you 6 weeks ago? Where were you 2 months ago? President Trump is somebody who's going to come out swinging, and he definitely pitches, and when they pitch him that ball, he will swing hard. And so I'm not surprised, and I don't think that we're going to see this change anytime soon.
Yeah, guys, stand by. We got more coming up here. Jesse, Robin, stick around. Much more to come here on Newsmax Now.